We're calling it the Badging Project, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's had so many names. We seem to be the only ones here.
We've got about 33 attendees so far.
Oh, okay. We can only see ourselves then.
Yes. So why don't I give it another minute and then we can go ahead and start.
Okay. Oh, there it is.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon and good morning, everyone, depending on which time zone you're in. Welcome to our panel where we're going to be talking about NASPAA's new exciting badging project. And for those of you who haven't been part of this conversation, we've been working on this for 2 years. And the genesis of this was we wanted to do something inside of NASPAA that would create some recognition for programs besides the US News and World Report rankings. And there was a sense that, you know, we all know all the glaring flaws in those rankings and all the challenges that come with them. And so NASPAA wanted to spend some time thinking about how we could create an environment where institutions could still distinguish themselves, which is ostensibly the purpose of the rankings, but at the same time meet some broader public policy goals. And so we devised a project, and it's had many names, and we've been working on it for a couple of years, wherein we would provide badges or recognition for programs who had outstanding practices in several areas. And in the conversation about what areas to pick, we wanted to pick some that were priorities that we could foster and facilitate inside the public service community. And so the 4 areas we picked were diversity and inclusion, sustainability, civic engagement, and globalization. And so the concept behind all of this, and the program was largely developed in the context of the data committee. So I want to start off by just thanking first Jack Meeks for the inspiration behind this and his tenure as president, but also the members of the data committee over the past 2 years who have really labored and spent a lot of time and effort kind of working through the mechanics of how this process would work. So what you're going to see today is the result of the work of a lot of people, and especially Stacy Drudy at NASPAA, and she's on the conversation with us. And in fact, she's going to be walking us through all of this. She really had to handle the nuts and bolts of how we make this thing work. And so the concept is this: for any accredited program in NASPAA, if you want to identify yourselves or seek recognition in this badging framework as someone who has distinction in one of these areas, there's an application portal and an instrument that Stacy's going to share with us in a couple seconds. And this is going to change over time. We're eventually going to roll it probably into the data collection that we do for COPRA and the other aspects of NASPAA's data system, but the Civic Core engine. But to start off, we're using other platforms. And the idea is you would fill out a form and you would identify the areas that you wanted to be identified in. And then you would provide context and information. And Stacy's going to give us some examples of this. And basically, it has to do with scholarship, the kind of courses you offer, the kind of activities you might offer in that area. And it was designed for you to provide a menu. And once you presented this information, then the information would be integrated into a database, and then the search engines inside of NASPAA would report back that if you were interested, for example, in sustainability, you would click the button in the search portal, and it would give you a list of the programs who had distinction in this area, and then would provide a link to the information that school has provided that documents how they're distinctive in that space. And so this really was a way for programs to kind of self-identify, but also to document that they are in fact outstanding in these areas. And so I think with that context, I don't think I've left out any really critical details, Stacy, other than we're in the process of rolling it out right now. And so we wanted to spend this time to just show you what the product looks like, what the process looks like. And then Mary Kay is here with us today to talk, and I can also talk because Pepperdine actually participated in the pilot of this, talk about kind of what it's like as a member institution to take advantage of this opportunity. So Stacy, why don't I go ahead and turn it over to you?
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to drop a link into the chat. I'm going to share my screen, but just so that you also can see where this is housed on the NASPAA website, that link will bring you there. So let me share my screen, and hopefully you all can see that now. In the NASPAA website, we have a section of the website under our initiatives, under resources, where we have information about the public service indicators pilot. And this is, as Mike shared, this is the initial part of where the data that we collected from schools who participated in the pilot is housed. And once, now that the pilot is done and as we begin to incorporate this into Civicor, it will switch, but this is really just to give you a feel for what this will look like eventually when that is added to the search. So the badging initiative, we have instructions on it, and there is a PDF, but, well, the PDF reference is what you can download to see exactly before you start participating in the process, what information NASPAA is collecting, because currently we will be, before we engage it into Civicor, we'll be collecting the data as we did with the pilot through the a SurveyMonkey instrument. And this will allow us to collect the information for programs, and then we will be able to upload that into the Civicor system once the searches parameters are set and also the profiles are created. But we wanted to begin collecting the information so that we have that ready into the system for when those are available. So as Michael said, the badging indicator areas: civic engagement, sustainability, inclusion, and globalization. We have the instructions within the website of exactly what the initiative looks like. And the most important thing for each of the areas is that there's two sets of requirements that every program has to provide so that we do have comparability across schools. And those required areas are the courses. So there needs to be 3 courses for which you have information covered within that course, and also 3 relevant pieces of scholarship. And so we ask that the programs who participate in the initiative provide syllabi that discuss how they cover that topic, and also links to the scholarship on how that topic is addressed. The schools themselves get to decide how and which ways in which they operationalize the indicated area is how they would like to have their school recognized for and considered. The other main thing that is key here, and as Mike indicated, is that this is a very transparency-focused process. This is not something in which COPRA reviews any of this. They're completely separate from the process entirely. The only reason in which NASPAA has required that those who participate in the program be accredited schools only is because, one, we have an indication of quality within those programs because they are accredited, and also due to the fact that there is Standard 7, which requires transparency and honesty in the data that is made publicly available about programs. It allows for NASPAA to have some type of recourse if there's any information that is incorrectly provided in terms of, or a school says that they're doing things that they're not actually doing. It does provide NASPAA some type of recourse. So the schools have, outside of the two main indicator areas that are required, there are other options that are provided that they can say, this is how our program operationalizes the indicator. That might be through concentrations, it might be through partnerships, it might be through service learning or other experiences that are available on the campus. But these are not exhaustive lists of what programs can choose from. If schools are doing things that are not on this list, they can provide that information. But this is also just to give schools an idea of what those types of indicators might be. The two required fields are really what is the main focus in terms of things that all schools have to do. And so for each of the 4 areas, there's options that are available in listings of ways in which schools might show their commitment to a specific badging indicator area. And so a school that is interested in saying, we have a commitment to a specific badge area would currently come to the NASPAA website, to this page, and you could download both the instructions and the PDF to be able to see what we're collecting in the SurveyMonkey, so you have that material already available for you. And when you're ready, you would come to the SurveyMonkey and provide that information. You would do so by indicating some basic information. You're saying, so for example, if you were interested in a civic engagement badge, you would come in here and say, yes, my school wants to show a commitment to civic engagement. And you would provide the course title, a brief explanation of how that exemplifies your program's commitment. And we say brief because we want to make this information publicly available. So it needs to be able to fit into a profile in a way that is easily reviewable by students and the public. And then you upload your syllabi for that course. And so for each of the required areas, so the courses, you'd provide that information. And then we ask about the scholarship. And again, we ask for 3 pieces of scholarship, and you explain and provide the information about that. And then for the additional areas that are not required, we have the options available that are listed on the instruction sheets, but then you also have the option for another way in which your program has that information. And the ones that you click would allow for you to provide that information on the following page. And so that is how NASPAA is currently collecting the information on, because I'm not filling that out. But that's how we're collecting the information. Once we have the data collected, currently, what we have for the pilot is you can go and see some of the examples of the schools that have participated in this. And eventually, as we've stated, this will be put into the NASPAA school profiles and the school search. But until that's done, we have, and I'm going to go into University of Washington's, the data that they provided as an example. And this is a flip book of the information that they entered into the SurveyMonkey. So we have the badging initiative, and we have their responses. So we have their civic engagement badge that they provided for information for. We have, the year in which, so we know when it was current. And so they provided their exemplary courses. You'll be able to, you can magnify in on it and see the data that they provided. And also you can click the school course and have access to the syllabi and information that they provided on how that meets the badging indicator. And so for each of the areas in which University of Washington provided their information, we have the indicators here that are available for those students who are interested and for the public who may be interested in how the school operationalized that badging indicator. And so, you know, this is how the transparency aspect of the badging works. You know, this is how a school operationalized inclusivity, and this is how a school operationalized globalization. And it is for those individuals who are looking at it to say if this makes sense to them. And so there's also within them the information that we provided just to provide some, the instructions we provided to provide information of what the school's options were. But this is just a quick review of what we currently have available on the schools that participated in the pilot. And once, you know, we continue to grow this initiative, as I said, it'll be part of the school search and the school profile. But I think one of the other important aspects of this that I want to highlight is the fact that by collecting this information, NASPAA now has a repository of data by schools that participate in these badges to say, all right, what's scholarship look like in civic engagement at NASPAA schools? And NASPAA can go and look and say, hey, these are what our schools are saying about what they're doing in civic engagement, and here's articles on it and scholarship that's coming out of our programs in this area. And so I think not only is it exciting for each school to highlight what they're doing in these specific areas, but for NASPAA as a whole to say, you know, this is the scholarship that is being produced in this field on these areas. You know, here's how we're teaching it in our courses, and, you know, making it available for students to be able to look at and review that and make determinations on what they think about what schools are doing. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to show that all to you. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mary Kay now to talk about how University of Washington, one of our pilot schools, you know, had this discussion.
Thanks, Stacy. I guess I'll talk without going into the details of each of the badges. I'll talk a little bit about the process and I guess some of the decisions that we had to make along the way. We were really excited to participate in this because we like the kind of combination of sort of, this is what you're going to provide and everything's going to look the same, but then also the opportunity to feature through the additional indicators, you know, some of the particular things that we might be doing that we think make our different program areas special. So it seemed like a great combination of sort of standardization so that you could look across programs, but also programs being able to kind of highlight stuff that they're really proud of. And so that's why we decided to go ahead and do the pilot, I think, with all 4 of the badge areas. So I think for us, you know, as a relatively large MPA program, one of the challenges was just administratively internally, you know, was one person going to do this? Was we were going to appoint, you know, faculty members from each area? And so we had one coordinator person and then the faculty lead in each one of those areas, kind of trying to put together what we wanted to feature for each one of those badges. And I think we were in a lucky position in that, because again, we're a relatively larger program, that we had to make choices. You know, we might have 5 or 6 courses to feature, or, you know, 10 or 15 articles that we might want to feature. So then there's that question of whose article to feature and how to make that kind of decision. And so I think we tried to choose courses in each area that kind of gave a range of the stuff that we do. So some management focused, some more policy or quantitative focused, so that one could, you know, one could sort of see the range of opportunities within each issue area. And the same thing for the scholarship, trying to feature scholarship that indicated the breadth of what we were doing, and also I think would be topical, accessible, you know, generate interest among people that were coming to look at the site and look at those areas. So that's kind of how we went about making the difficult choices about what to feature in the website. And then I mentioned earlier that we really like this idea of additional indicators. in some of these areas, we have, graduate certificate programs, or we have joint programs with other schools. And so being able to feature that as another component of what we do in that area was really helpful for us to kind of lift up stuff that we're excited about and that we would want other people to know about. So the process in terms of just, interfacing with the NASPAA site and uploading, was relatively straightforward. Of course, the back end of it takes some decision making and some thought and some sort of preparation so that everything's in the right, format and kind of ready to go in terms of uploading. So I wouldn't say it was a hugely cumbersome process, but there definitely needs to be, a couple of people in the institution invested in the process and willing to kind of shepherd it along and kind of get faculty buy-in for the process. And so that, I think, just in terms of making sure that, sometimes academic abstracts aren't exactly perfectly set up to be, the featured scholarship for an area. So it did involve some, reframing of the abstracts a little bit, some working of syllabi so that we had kind of sample syllabi that we thought were a good example of how we go about teaching that particular topic, not necessarily this specific person's syllabi for that specific quarter. So I think some of the work for us was just in taking a hard look at the stuff we wanted to upload and making sure the tone and the way we were putting it forward, made sense for this kind of a format. And so my colleague Marika Claywater did a huge load of that work as well, helping to kind of get that ready. So that's kind of what the process was like for us. It was, relatively straightforward, but it did require, dedicating some resources to making it happen. So maybe I'll stop there, and then if people have specific questions, it might be better just to answer them in the question process.
Thanks, Mary Kay. I think, some of you might be asking, how did we come up with these 4 topics? And I mean, as I'm sure all of you can see, these are major topics and trends that are affecting the field, but it also spun off of NASPAA's interest in sort of advancing the UN's Sustainable Development Framework, Sustainable Development Goal Framework, and especially SDG, I think it's 16. I always confuse 16 and 17, but I think it's 16. And so to really focus in on sort of these 4 things, there is an expectation over time that these categories would grow and that there would be new fields added. We really did want to limit it to these 4 at this point, just so we can get the infrastructure set up. I mean, once it's in, it's not that hard to add new areas. There's also, I think, a sense of making sure that we don't overwhelm people with information. And so one of the goals for NASPAA was to try and create new resources for our members to be able to use to really tell the story of these important areas of priority for the association and for the field of public service. So I want to thank Stacy especially for all the amazing work. I mean, as you saw in those flip books, those are fantastic products that really, I think, reflect well on the schools and on NASPAA as an organization. We did want to open the floor up to questions. I think you can put questions in the chat box and we'll be able to see them there if there are any questions about the process. In terms of timing for rollout, Stacy, do you want to give an update on when institutions can be looking for trying to access these?
Well, the institutions can access through the SurveyMonkey currently. We'll be able to take on that information. I think we're in conversations with Civicor about getting, it programmed into there and then into the school search. And I think once we have that, we'll be able to upload or have them upload on the back end any data that we've collected through the SurveyMonkey so that schools won't have to, re-put in information that they may have already provided us. So we're not, once schools are ready to have that information, we'll be collecting it. And we, so it's available currently on the website.
Are there any questions from our participants and attendees? I see we have about 40 of you out there. I mean, I think, the Civicor timeline is probably in the next several months in terms of releasing the searchability in the institutional search. One of my personal goals was to get this in the system before the next US News rankings came out. I think it's just, it's a way to tell our story without, sort of the beauty contest, if you will, of the U.S. News rankings.
We have a question from Mary Scherchart, and I'm going to unmute her. Okay, Mike?
You have to unmute Mary on your side, I think.
Thank you. Thank you for, I thought I'd be automatically unmuted. So my question involves whether there is any kind of fee involved to pay to get these badges included on the profile, part of the search. I think it's wonderful. We're going to do it, probably whether or not there's a fee, but just want to know and be prepared.
I don't believe there's going to be a fee for this. It's a benefit of being an accredited institution. Now, it is restricted only to NASPAA members who are accredited at this point, because we wanted to make sure to have the data infrastructure there with it in parallel. The other thing, as we put this profile together, one of the things that we tried really hard to do, and this is part of why we only ask for 3 journal articles and 3 syllabi, is to make sure that both small programs and large programs could kind of be fairly represented side by side in this space. So a program like ours that has less than 10 full-time faculty versus other institutions that might have many, many more faculty, that we can both kind of tell our stories, and that the resources, if you think about the resources that are needed to do this, and Pepperdine participated in the pilot as well, the resources needed are fairly small in terms of being able to put the information together.
I've seen a question from the chat for, I guess, for the University of Washington. Do we have an estimate of the staff or time invested to move forward in total on all 4 badges? Oh, I think that was from Susan. Thanks, Susan. I don't have, I can't tell you in terms of hours. I think what helped a little bit was to get a faculty lead in each, to kind of have one coordinating person and then have a faculty lead in each one of those areas who took a look at the area and who knew the area and could sort of put forward candidate courses and scholarship and things like that. So I guess it depends on whether or not, one person's going to do all that work or one person's going to coordinate. So the lead person really just had to focus on making sure things were sort of parallel across the different areas, whereas the faculty that were working on this in terms of each issue area had to make the decision about what was going to be featured and lifted up. So I think the featuring was a relatively short time period. Again, the kind of writing things up and just making sure the information was going to fit well with the format was, definitely a little bit more time. And so a staff person could support with some of that stuff, but it did take, faculty, or maybe it would take, if you had an MPA director, that kind of position. We don't have that, some of that person's, time to write that up. So it was a fairly heavy service load for the faculty member that did it. And if I can find it, if I can get an estimate from her, I will send it to you.
Thanks, Mary Kay. Another question is, how is the application reviewed and badge determination made? Also, what is the general turnaround time? So the trick with this is we wanted to create accountability. And so one of the requirements that wasn't there for the pilots, but will be for folks who are participating in the general badging program once we actually get the search engine tied in, is the expectation that you will have a web page on your university site that contains similar information. So that tells the story of sustainability or tells the story of civic engagement at your program. And there'll be a link to that site. And so the idea is that if you can get away with putting it on your university website, there must be some truth in it, because universities are very careful with all the legal climates out there to do that. So there's really not a review process. Accredited members can participate, and you can start participating now in terms of filling out the information. But as soon as the information gets posted in the system, there will be a batch update cycle at some point, I'm sure, moving the system from one platform to the other. But it'll be pretty quick turnaround. It's not going to be months at a time. And the idea is that we wanted to create a system where institutions could participate, could tell their stories, but at the same time, there was that level of accountability by posting it on their own websites that in fact, that what they're posting is consistent with what the story they're telling on their home pages. And so at this point, like I said, for the pilot programs, we didn't really put that expectation there because we just wanted to get the mechanics and put the material together. Going forward, that will be the expectation. So if you think about, the question that was just asked about faculty, staff, time, and cost, at least I know at Pepperdine, that may actually be one of the biggest hurdles we have to go through to make this happen. I mean, there are certain pages that we have some control over, and so we'll be able to park things there. But in most universities, I know that website profile is one of the big hurdles. Stacy, are there other questions? I'm not seeing questions in the chat, so you might be seeing more than I do as the host.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any either.
So if you have suggestions about this process, I do want to mention that, the NASPAA Data Committee, Stacy's a great contact to get information through, but the NASPAA Data Committee are the ones that are sort of shepherding this through the process. I mean, it's gone through Executive Council and been approved there, but in terms of even suggestions for future programs, I'm sure there'll be some input solicited for membership for new categories going forward. I know there's probably some non-accredited institutions that are saying, gee, we would love to be part of this. At this time, we really wanted, since it is being provided on a cost-free basis, we really wanted to make it a benefit for those who are participating in the accreditation process. I think that's certainly a conversation we can open up in the future, maybe on a fee basis or something like that, to help sustain the infrastructure. I mean, as you may know, the COPRA and the accreditation process sustains the data infrastructure for NASPAA. Also, if I could just make a shameless plug for the 42 folks who are online with us, November 1st is the deadline for your NASPAA data reports. And the more, especially in this COVID environment, especially with the chaos and all of our programs facing financial pressure, I'm sure, from their institutions, being able to tell our story with really high quality and as complete as possible data is going to be a really powerful tool. So I just want to put a shameless plug in for that, even though I'm no longer chair, but we really do need the information to make the story as compelling as possible. I don't suppose there's a penalty for ending early if people don't have questions. I think Mary Kay and Stacy and I are certainly willing to remain online for at least the next 5 minutes if people have questions. But please feel free to email myself, michael.shires@pepperdine.edu, or Stacy at NASPAA, and we can also answer questions offline. I want to thank Stacy and Mary Kay for joining us today. And if there are no other questions, I guess we can end our session a few minutes early. I never thought I would go to an academic conference and actually end early, but in this era of Zoom, I'm really grateful for any moment and not in front of the screen that I can have. I've just put my email in the, oops, I did not put it in the general box. I put it, let me put my email in for everybody. And with that, I really look forward to seeing everybody next year when we can be in person, I think, in Chicago. So thank you for joining us today. And again, we will remain if you have any questions for us.